So if you see that little red thing up there,
Okay,
if I go like that, and turn to the screen, that means the audience can hear.
It will be an honor.
Or people on Zoom can hear the audience pretty well.
okay.
John, we want
Great.
you in the photo.
Oh, okay.
Actually, can
If
we
you-
advance to the title slide just for 1 second for the photo? Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay. Is
Yeah.
that okay?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
great. How do we stand with our heads in the slide?
I know. It's like you're in a sun. Is it weird with the light? Okay,
Okay.
because we can back it up too.
Yeah.
Okay,
Or
let's
step
back it up.
forward?
Well, no, I think if we go to the other slide,
Oh, the next
then there's
slide.
not as much glare.
I'm here behind the
Oh,
podium.
podium.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, podium.
Okay, here we go.
There you go. That's a good
Okay.
idea. That makes more sense because we're not.
Okay, let's, one
I
more
don't
feet
take the
over, so
pictures.
Ozzy's out of there. Okay, one more.
Oh,
okay,
yeah,
there we go.
Okay,
I'm
we're
still
on.
under the spotlight.
I don't take the pictures in my house, so. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do it now or I'm gonna forget.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can do that. Oh, you can do that. When you come up, just hit. No, it's what. Hit podium icon for you,
Okay.
and then when she goes, hit lavalier and turn your.
So I hit podium when I turn on.
A quick question. Can you remind me, do I need to leave time for questions at the end?
Yeah.
Okay, and how much time do you prefer? Like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes? Okay, great. I can do that. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
This one goes at a clip, so we cover a lot. Yeah. Great. So we can invite them to put questions in the chat, essentially.
Yeah, I'll have to come up and hang there. do that.
Great, thank you.
Totally look funny in the one we're.
Oh, where we're half highlighted.
Yeah, okay, good call to move.
Ozzy, thank you again for all the details and the coordination. You've really made this such a smooth arrival. Thank you. Thank you. And the accommodations are just exquisite, really exquisite.
The rest of your time.
Oh, yes, already, yep. Oh, it's full.
Taking advantage of you.
Oh, yes. Dr. Shaw was like, what else can we do? And I was like, well, here's a list. And she's like, great, let's do the list. So,
Awesome.
yeah, so I did a workshop yesterday afternoon.
Yeah.
And then we've got several more going today and tomorrow. So, yeah. And it's my first time to Phoenix.
It is.
What a great place. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Welcome.
Thank
Truly
you.
welcome.
Yes.
It's your first time.
Yeah.
To see all the cactus.
I know. The cactus in the mountains so close. And
Yeah.
just even getting to drive through different neighborhoods as we go to eat or connect. Yeah. So
Well, this is your first time, but definitely not your last, so.
I sure hope
Hope to
not,
see you
because
back
I
here
really enjoy
again and
this.
again.
Yeah. Yeah. Has this been home for you?
Well, I'm originally from Iran, even
Oh.
though I lasted Puerto Rico, I was married to a Mexican.
I love it. My husband is originally from from Hong Kong,
Oh,
Chinese Hong
yeah.
Kong, but born in the British state. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
and then, I lived here in Arizona in 2000, so 20.
Yeah.
Long years.
I know people ask,
Like I said, I'm moving.
You're right. then you stay. Yes. I know people ask, where's home? And it's like, well, next year will be 30 years in Minnesota. And it's like, yes, Minnesota. It's, and it's like, well, home is Washington State, but maybe home is Minnesota now. I mean, it is, but like
There
home,
should be a-
home.
If you live in a state for 20+ years, that's your home.
That's your home, right? Right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We did 8:30 and.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. You can stay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I understand the residents always come 8:30 or 7:30 to 7:40.
Right. The sort of trickle in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So about 2/3 your audience.
Okay, good.
Oh, no, I forgot to that. Yeah, or you want.
Actually, I'm going to.
Where's your meeting with next?
I'm going to Ryan's house next.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
for a tour of the facilities. We have our version of Orion's house called Crescent Cove,
Uh-huh.
and it's only the third in the country.
Okay.
So when Levi was alive, my son, we lent our lived experience in real time to building Crescent Cove. And so now it's a facility. It's been open for several years, and we've heard about Ryan's house. We've had guests come for our symposium. So I finally get to see it.
Does it mean the Ryan House is one of the first two?
Yes, it
Oh,
does.
okay.
Ryan House is the second one. George Mark is in California. Ryan House is the second. It was two for a very long time. And now three, and then there's a kind of more of a tidal wave. There's, organizations around the country that are trying, but some of it is licensing legislation has to be changed first in each state. So, yeah, step by step. Yeah. So I'm excited to go there, and then I'm going to do lunch with the palliative care team. And then I have a session on grief picture books. So I've curated picture books for children and read many of them. I can't say all because there's always new ones. And then curated into just a tight list of if you're 4, 5, or 6, or 6, 7, or 8, or 8, 9, 10, 12, what is grief education through picture books, and what are really the most effective books? So, and then I'll do a workshop at Ryan's house tomorrow. So, yeah, it's a good fun time. Yeah.
Are you ready for? Okay.
I need to turn my mic back on.
Yeah, well, I think is it say green there?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
we
turn
turn
it on here.
from there.
Oh, and then, okay.
Okay, so podium's on. Oh, look at that. Podium's on. All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Trustee Shaw. I'm the Division Chief for Palliative Medicine, and I'm very excited to introduce Danelle Shu this morning. Danelle is a bereaved parent, national parent advocate, and clinician educator. She is the mother of Levi, who was born in 2009 with severe hypoxic-ischemic encephalopathy, managing his complex medical needs at home until his death in 2017. Danelle has presented at numerous educational conferences and trainings related to palliative care, end-of-life care, and caring for children with medical complexity. She is a member of numerous advocacy groups providing caregiver perspectives, including the National Coalition for Hospice and Palliative Care Pediatric Division and the Minnesota Advocacy Group that works with legislation. For the last 7 years, she has been a parent faculty for the University of Minnesota's End of Life Care Skills Workshop involved in curriculum design and standardized patient training. She has delivered keynote addresses at the McGill Palliative Care International Congress and the Social Worker Hospice and Palliative Care Network. Danelle is able to bring the family perspective to the clinician education space in a thoughtful, dynamic, and transparent manner that fosters thought and engagement. I am thrilled to have her here today for Grand Rounds, and please join me in welcoming her.
Good morning and welcome. Today, we are going to step into the deep waters of sustained uncertainty. This is a space that is inhabited by all of the families that you care for with complex medical needs. And I would like to open that lens to say that there are many families whose children don't have complex medical needs, but whom you care for, where they are living in a state of sustained uncertainty. In today's time in history, in the place where we are at in our country, there are families whose uncertainty relates to their own safety, to whether or not they can receive the care that their child needs, and many more ways that uncertainty is present in their lives. Today, we're going to focus on the families whose children have complex medical needs. And I'd like to invite you that if your sphere of care doesn't include these children, that you would consider how their lived experience is an opportunity to see deeper into the spaces of the children and families that you do care for. Today, in person and virtually, we are a gathered community. And as your teacher today, it's my responsibility to give you some guided, anticipatory guidance here. As we go into these deep waters, I want to acknowledge that uncertainty is present in the room, in your personal lives. It is present in our collective room here, perhaps in your practice, in the families that you're caring for, in the time of history that you are providing care. Knowing that, I would like to offer some wellness strategies. Many times you're working in very quick, fast-paced environments, and there really isn't time to stop. And so embedded into the teaching today and our time together is an opportunity to practice caring for yourself while learning about the family perspective. So there's a few tools I'd like to offer to you. The first is, as we go into sustained uncertainty, this topic and the experiences of the families that you'll hear about can feel heavy and weighted. And in that, we need a buoy to help bring us up. Sometimes the experiences of this, we can find ourselves drifting off, our thoughts kind of disconnecting from where we're at and what's going on in this session right now. And in that, we need an anchor to bring us back. So I'd like to offer you a moment to just try what I call a buoy and an anchor. So the buoy is a breath, and specifically what I call an accordion breath. And the way to find your accordion breath, join me, take your elbows, rub them on the sides of your ribs, which is about where your diaphragm is, right? We're going to sensory wake up we're going to do the sensory neuromotor processing. So we've just given a sensory experience to the body. We're going to wake up into our neural processing that this is the place in the body we want to give attention to. And now we're going to do some breathing together. So let your arms rest at your sides. And right where you've woken up your attention, inhale into your side body. And exhale, feel the accordion gathering and folding. Again, as a community, inhale, we open the accordion. And exhale, we fold and gather. Once again, inhale, opening. And exhale, gathering. That is a buoy breath. At any point in today's session, if you find yourself in that place of heaviness, you can access your buoy breath, your accordion breath. When we find ourselves floating off, we need an anchor, and our heartbeat is a rhythm, a deep anchor inside our body. Take a moment and find your pulse near your neck or your wrist, and just feel this rhythm that is unique and common, ancient and present. If at some point in today's session you find yourself floating off in your thoughts, meaning not thinking about what we're doing here today, perhaps accessing your anchor is a way to bring yourself back into this session. At any point, you can access these. 2 more housekeeping type things is we have papers here. If you're gathered online, please get yourself a sheet of paper. You can go ahead and pass them out here. Later in the session, you're going to need a blank sheet of paper and a pen. Whether that is a digital platform or an actual physical piece of paper, it doesn't matter. Ideally, you'll be handwriting. This document will only be for you when we get to it. And then if you don't have that capacity and all you have is typing and list making, that will work as well. But ideally, having that kinetic experience of drawing or writing, what we're going to do later. We are going to do an exercise that is going to be a reflective exercise as part of our preparation. And then also later in the session, if you are attending virtually, there is going to be a key QR code in the middle of the session, and you'll need to be able to have a way to scan to access the document. The document is too detailed for me to put it on a slide for everyone to see it appropriately. So we do have some hard copies we can hand out here in the room, but if you're here virtually, I just want to give you a heads up about that. All right. One more thing is in medicine, we have a similar experience to the theater. It's the 4th wall. In the theater, we have the space on the stage where people are performing, where the actions of the theater and all its forms are created. We have this veil we call the 4th wall. It's often just a line in space. And then we have the audience. And in medicine, we have a reflective aspect of it. And appropriately, we have families and patients, and we have clinicians and providers. Today in this space, you have an opportunity to practice bringing that 4th wall down. I am not your patient, nor is my child or our family, and you are not my clinician. We are here in an educational space. But sometimes in clinical settings, we get so attuned to bringing that 4th wall up that we don't know how high it is or how thick it is. And this is what I call through Redbird a brave space, a space where we can practice bringing down that 4th wall as a way to connect through humanity and then begin to notice when it goes up. When does it go up fast and quick? When does it go up thick and dense? But sometimes we don't know it's up until we've had an opportunity to bring it down. So that is part of today's session as well. Notice in any of the content and the sections that we are a part of, when and if your 4th wall goes up, and particularly when it goes up quickly. I invite you to be curious if and when that happens. I got to figure out which way this clicker goes. So second thing to conclude our guided preparation is to honor our teachers. We have 8 families who have contributed to this session today. And as an act of honoring them, I invite you, wherever you are, to take a moment, if you're able, to stand or to sit up a little taller in your seat, whichever it is that's most accessible to you. One of the things that happens when a child dies is their name dissipates. And all of the families have invited me to invite you into this ritual. And we're going to engage this ancient rhythm of call and response. We're going to start with my son Levi's name, and then I'm going to introduce you to each of the 8 teachers. We're going to do it in a call and response rhythm. I will speak out the name and invite you to speak out the child's name. After we speak the child's name, we'll have a moment of pause to feel the resonance of their name in this space and their name through your body. We'll speak Levi's name twice, and then I'll introduce you to the rest of our teachers here today. Let's begin. Levi.
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 Lizzie, Isabel, Tana, Roman, Dakota, Isaac, Hayden. You may be seated. A little window into my experience and my family's experience with sustained uncertainty. Levi's the first child in our family, the first grandchild on both sides of the family. It was that anticipatory, yes, we are finally having a baby. And then Levi was born, and we made a sharp turn to the neonatal ICU. We had never been in an ICU setting. We had no friends or family that had ever had a child in an ICU setting. We had no friends or family that had ever had a child with a life-limiting or a diagnosis that included an experience of living a life with disabilities, let alone medical complexities. This was completely out of our realm of experience, and yet here comes Levi. In those early hours, we had a scan of the brain, and we found out that every aspect of his brain, with a question of the brainstem, was affected by the severe brain damage. There was no clear answer of why or how this happened. It just was. And when we asked, what does this mean in terms of how much time do we have? I mean, where are we? The prognosis, as we know, is a best estimate, hours to days. As you can see, Levi went off the map of that prognosis. No one knew, not even the clinicians, whether hours to days was truly it, but that was the best we knew at that moment. With the list of diagnoses that we received in those early hours and then in the days and the weeks that followed, the one diagnosis that was never spoken of was the diagnosis of uncertainty. With all of these complex medical realities, in came a diagnosis that sat right next to the umbrella diagnosis of severe HIE, uncertainty. Hours to days is a space of uncertainty. Even as we got the best birthday present ever, and I genuinely mean this, a palliative care consult. Palliative care was the best birthday present he received in those early weeks because it changed our life. It went from this place of fear to how can we, with all the love that we have as parents, translate our hopes, our wishes, our fears, our never do's, our if we can onlys, our desire to have a beautiful lived life with our son. How do we translate that into medical decisions? How do we live our best life in the midst of uncertainty? Levi went home with palliative care. We had palliative care primarily throughout all of his life, thankfully. Not every families get that. We did, and we had a radically different life because of it. In the midst of this, we also learned how to care for him at home. We went from this ICU setting, and even with transitional support, there's a day when you land home and it's mom and dad in our household. We barely know how to change a diaper. I mean, a NICU nurse taught me how to change a diaper. And here we have a complex medical child. Uncertainty showed up when I would lay him down to sleep, and it was also time for me to sleep because it was just mom and dad and Levi. And I would pray this prayer every time. Dear God, if anything happens while we're asleep, wake me up. Give me the knowledge to know what is happening and the wisdom to know what to do. I'm not medically trained. I'm a mom of this child who we love. As life continued, Levi lived long enough to be a big brother. Welcome to our world. Levi, with his medical complexities, had a body that was quiet and still, a response time that took 2.5 minutes for anything. And then came younger brother. And this Christmas photo is the best expression of our life. Levi, I could easily get a great picture of him. Younger brother, good luck. Movement, noise, loud, developmental changes, quick and fast. And we lived in the space of uncertainty of how do I parent Levi and run an ICU, and how do I parent his brother who was essentially born into our home of an ICU, right? When he came home to the ICU. And this was normal life for him. And by the time he was 3 years old and up and talking, even before he was born, we had established rhythms of night nurses, which, by the way, our shift was 3 nights a week, 7 hours. That was a night nurse shift because that's all the budget allowed for that we had access to. Every other night was a parent 24-hour overnight and all the days in between. And we slowly gathered care and resources to have care. So when younger brother would wake up, he would wake up and kind of search the house and see who's here this morning, what's going on. And then he would also come find me. And uncertainty showed up for him in the questions he would ask every morning. What's happening today, Mama? And who's coming for me? The uncertainty that every day was different. And really, my answer was a best guess at that moment. And who's coming for me? Even as a young child, with 2 parents who abundantly love him, with 2 parents who were working really hard to balance our attentions between our 2 children, he still wanted to know, who's coming for me? Can you hear the aloneness? Aloneness is one of the hallmarks of living in sustained uncertainty. Aloneness within the individual experience, within the collective family experience, within the community of families whose children have medical complexities. Aloneness. This is the insights into our lived experience, and to let you know that it isn't just the child's experience or the primary caregiver in our household was me, even with a father who is actively involved in care. It also is a part of the siblings' experience. And I would venture to say my mother, who is a family caregiver, and even the caregivers that came in and out of our house, because they never knew when they showed up, was it a good day or an awful day for Levi? Let's take a pause. Give you a chance to access your anchor or your buoy. In this session, we are going to have chapters, and we're going to make some turns in the chapters, and this is one of them. We're going to shift from my family's lived experience to an exercise for you to step into reflecting on a sustained uncertainty in your life. This is going to go by very fast. This is meant as an exercise to support you to better see families' lived experience and the information and the teaching I'm going to give later in this session. When I do this in a workshop setting, we have much more breadth and time to do this, and I still find it's valuable in a quick moment. So take your piece of paper, take your pen. We're going to do a mind map exercise. If you've never done a mind map before, a mind map has a central focus. So draw a circle in the center. It doesn't have to be as big as this one, preferably if it isn't. And we're going to step into reflecting on a collective time of sustained uncertainty. And that is the height of the COVID pandemic. In pediatrics, the definition of the height would be different than it was in the adult setting. You get to define what for you was the height of that space. Maybe and this is just for you, by the way. Maybe it's a year, maybe it's a certain pocket of time, maybe there's 2 pockets of time that you would say, that was my peak of sustained uncertainty. I'm going to walk through this very quickly. You may find that this mind map that you build is something that you want to have a conversation with a mentor, or with a trusted person in your life. You may find that this is a tool that's helpful to reflect on the current sustained uncertainty that you may be experiencing in your life. I am not a therapist, but I always recommend that you have people and professions that you trust, that you can receive care from, even as we look back on sustained uncertainty. We're going to look back versus look now. Okay? So, ready? My circle is going to move more so you can see the quadrants. So in the lower right quadrant, you can draw a box or a long line and it says work life. And this is going to be a quick brainstorming, just drop it down into the page. The question is, how did sustained uncertainty show up in your work life? Wherever you were in that frame of time in your height of the COVID pandemic. Maybe you were here at this hospital. Maybe you were in an educational setting, so your work life was actually your school. Where were you? And when you consider your work life, how did sustained uncertainty show up? Go ahead and just drop and brainstorm onto the page. I'm going to give a few examples that may spark some thought for you. So one is the PPE. Where did you get it from? How much could you use? When was it available? How did we use it? Another one is shift length. You may have shown up for a shift and thought it was a certain amount of time, only to find out that the person, the colleague that you're supposed to hand off the role to is not able to come in. So now what happens? Maybe it's that there were rapid policy changes and that was part of your responsibility, was to navigate them, to communicate them, or to navigate and communicate them to families, or to navigate them for yourself in your role. Perhaps it was that there were increased levels of acuity in the patients, the number of patients that had higher acuities, or the density, or the kind of things that the families came in with. How did COVID get dealt with in the care setting that you were in? Perhaps these are emotional things. Perhaps one of the ways that sustained uncertainty showed up was a lot of stress and anxiety. Perhaps it is fear. Perhaps there were other emotions. So taking a moment, again, this is gonna happen fast. You're gonna drop it down into the page. How did sustained uncertainty show up in your experience, in your work life? This is only for you. You will not be sharing this unless you choose outside of this setting. All right. Next, home life, specifically the household. In the household that you were in at this time, how did sustained uncertainty show up? Food sourcing. How did you get your groceries and your food? Did it show up that way? Did you have other people in your household that were now no longer going to school and now had online education? And that was an area of sustained uncertainty. Maybe you were living alone and now you're isolated. How did sustained uncertainty show up? Practically, logistically, emotionally? Again, letting it just flow out onto the page. This is for you. Let's go to the next quadrant. Your health, your physical health, your social, relational health, your emotional health, your spiritual health. How did sustained uncertainty show up and impact your health? What happened to you? This may relate to the other quadrants, but I want you to really look at your experience. What was impacted? How did sustained uncertainty show up? Did you, before this time of uncertainty, before the pandemic, did you have a rhythm of seeing people in your community or working and moving your body that weren't available? Then what? How did sustained uncertainty show up and impact your health, considering all aspects of your health? Next one, last one. This quadrant has more than one possibility because there are aspects of the pandemic and this experience that are unique to us. I live in Minneapolis. March 2020 is when the restrictions and the changes started happening in our broad community. In May, we met George Floyd in his life and in his death. That is a whole wing of our family's sustained uncertainty. Perhaps you had someone who you were family caregiving for that didn't live near you, or they were in a care setting. And that whole family caregiving piece is a wing of your sustained uncertainty. Maybe your wing is that you had a lot of people die. Maybe those people were patients. Maybe they were members of your family. Maybe it was your friends and family had a lot of people die. And so death was very present as a part of in this sustained uncertainty. Maybe there was someone in your family or your household who had a business, and that business was dramatically impacted in this same time. What is another wing or two of your experience in sustained uncertainty that it showed up? Take a moment and let that drop down into the page. Maybe part of it, if you were a student, is that you weren't sure if you were going to stay in the field. Maybe what was uncertain is if you were going to finish your degree. Were you going to continue to be pursuing this path as a clinician? Would you actually have a job? What would that look like? Maybe that is a whole wing of your uncertainty. Again, take a moment here and let this just drop down into the page. All right, let's go to our buoy. Rub those elbows just a moment. Release the arms down. And as a gathered community, we're going to return to today. We're going to feel our accordion breath, inhaling in our body today and exhaling, folding that accordion today. Today we are together, inhaling wide and deep and exhaling, gathering to our center. One more breath in your rhythm. Take a brief moment and look back down at your map. What do you notice? What stands out to you? What pulls itself off the page as you look at the fullness of your map for just a moment from your today space, looking back into that experience? And perhaps you make a note or two at the bottom of what draws up to you. What do you notice? There's a lot that's on your map, but maybe there's a few points or pieces that stand out to you in this moment. One of the gifts of the COVID pandemic is that there was an exit. We had the hope and then the delivery of a vaccine. We can say that that was then, and this is now. That is not true for families living in sustained uncertainty. In the family experience of sustained uncertainty, there is no exit, except their child's death. In some situations, cancer may be one of them. There may be a remission and a pause and an exit, but there is still the hovering that the cancer could or will return. By and large, for families whose children are living with medical complexities, or life impacting diagnoses, there is no exit until their child dies. And then they enter a different space of sustained uncertainty in their bereavement. Today, we're going to shift to the 8 domains, actually. This is a living document. The last time I taught this, it was 7 in the spring. I've continued to refine this work. And there are 8 domains that I've identified through my work as a family advocate, through my interface and education of clinicians, and through my deep knowledge, both personally and with other families, of where does sustained uncertainty exist. Sustained uncertainty has 8 domains. The main domain that you know about, I'm going to go ahead and put the QR code up for those that you need it, either here in the room or virtually. The main one that you know about because of your clinician role is the child's physical health, is a space you can all probably easily name children today that you are caring for, that there is uncertainty about what is going on with their physical health. There's another domain that some of you touch into more directly than others of the social, emotional, spiritual aspects of a family's life. There are the inequities. All of these families interface and experience inequity. There is medical life at home, running an ICU at whatever depth of an ICU that you have. There is a massive amount of uncertainty in that medical life at home. The financial piece, some of you interface directly with that as well. The child's education, we educate children. But what happens when your child has medical complexities? What happens to their educational experience? Not just in school and in that context, but also in the context of life and the learning of life. Even something like traveling from this part of the state to another part of the state. A simple journey to gather with family for the holidays in another part of this state can bring up a lot of uncertainty. But there is the education of what are the traditions and the rituals and the experiences of our families, and how do our children get to or not get to experience them. Grief is present at all times. The diagnosis of uncertainty, it shifted the longer Levi was alive. It went from being a diagnosis that was unspoken to a companion. It was there no matter what. And you had to learn how to live with it. And one of the factors of living with sustained uncertainty is that you will have grief. You will have many forms of grief. And then, because the only exit out of this is a child's death, it hovers in the background. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. So if you're here and you can get into the QR code, otherwise we have a couple of copies. You want to pass these out? And I want to give you a moment to take a look in detail at this mind map. This is just the broad quadrants, the domains. But in the mind map that I have, it's a very detailed expression of what is happening in each of these domains for families. What is the sustained uncertainties that they're experiencing? So I invite you, we're going to take a moment of pause. I invite you to read through this slowly and carefully and notice which aspects of sustained uncertainty are familiar to you and which ones are not. First, taking a moment to read through this. Looking at each domain.
And then as you continue to read through it, allow a child, a family that you're caring for or have recently cared for come to mind. How have you heard them speak of uncertainty in regards to one or more of these domains? How have you seen uncertainty present in your role as a clinician? And think specifically about a child, a family, or two. One of the aspects of being a clinician is that when a family is discharged or completes their clinic appointment, is they go back out into the community. And that lived experience of sustained uncertainty continues to journey with them, continues to companion with them. So as you think about this child, this family or two, what are some of the aspects of these domains that you actually don't know about for them? And can you be curious about that? How does the medical life at home impact the child's physical uncertainty? Because although these are domains, they also interface and layer with each other. I invite you, as you're able, to stand or sit up a little taller in your chair. We're going to take a look at the faces of the children who are our teachers. Sustained uncertainty is an embodied, lived experience. Before you see them in your care setting, they are already living inside this experience. Uncertainty is companioning them in their days and their nights. And as they come into the spaces where you care for them with great excellence, with great integrity, with best practice, their uncertainty journeys with them. And when they are moved back into the community from your care setting, sustained uncertainty continues to live with them. It is an embodied experience. You may be seated. In this next section, I invite you not to take notes. I invite you to give your full attention to these descriptions that families have regarding their sustained uncertainty. As I dialogued deeply with each of these families, part of what we discussed is, what is a metaphor? How would you describe what this is like for you? And so in this chapter of our time together, I'm going to invite you not to take notes, to allow your embodied presence to hear and fully receive the images and the descriptions that the families have. And trust that what needs to stay with you will stay with you. You may not hold and collect all of the descriptions that these families have, and that's okay. But there may be one or two that really imprint into you, and trust that it will, and you will carry it with you. Lizzie's family says that living in sustained uncertainty is like breathing through a straw for 8 years. For 8 years, breathing through a straw. Lizzie was a child that had a lot of hospitalizations, and both at home with siblings and a lot of love and an amazing care teams in the hospital, it's still night and day was like breathing through a straw. Your accordion breath is much bigger than a straw. Isabel's family says that living with sustained uncertainty for her full 18 years was like walking on a wooden suspension bridge, and you never knowed which planks were broken or missing. Her family would say sometimes you could see the missing planks, And there was this chasm that I would have to cross. Sometimes that showed up in decisions that needed to be made that really had no good answers, but we still need to make a decision. Sometimes it showed up in the gaps of care that were available or not available. Sometimes, as her parents would describe, it was like stepping on the plank, and it wasn't until you started to give it some weight and lean into it that you found out that it was cracked and breaking. And a suspension bridge, what happens? It moves inherently, right? It's always swinging at some level. Sustained uncertainty in Roman's family is described as staring at a bear and waiting for it to attack. You can see the bear. You can see that it is big and ferocious and maybe probably bigger than you. And it will attack. The unknown, the uncertainty will show up. And you just had to wait it out. You had to live with the unknown of when this would happen and that there are outcomes that likely would happen. Many of these families describe that they are the 1%, that when they go in to do a clinic procedure or a surgery or consider a new medication, they want to know what is the 1% chance, because we live in the 1% space. The variables of uncertainty are so big and so profound to these children's lives that even a 1% can show up as the bear or as the broken and missing plank. Isaac's family has a related experience where it was like a car crash that's going to happen. You don't know when or how severe it's going to be. In Isaac's family, he is one of 10 children. His family had 2 biological children, one with medical complexities who has lived into adulthood. And then this family opened their homes and their hearts to adopt 8 more families. Isaac was the 10th family and the second death that they experienced. All of their children had medical journeys and their own unique compilation of complexities. And they would say that for each of their children, they're waiting for the car to crash. So think of the families who have more than one child. The rate and speed at which these cars are moving are different. And then the timing of the impact of the crash can happen in very different ways for each child within the same family. Caden, who's 15, almost 16, his family describes it as constant chaos and exhaustion, constant, non-stop, all day, every day. In Caden's family's description, they would say, I can make a mind map of each specialist or each category of care that we go and see clinicians for. And each one of those has complexities. I can make an entire map around each of those. And the movement and the shifting of that, and then layer on that the complexity of home. Mom, who's the main caregiver in terms of the coordinator and the holder of the entire mind map, is always struggling. Who's caring for my child at home? PCAs, personal care assistants, is the space that they have because it's too hard to find a nurse, even though he's nursing level care. So she's always juggling. Do I have people? The current group of people I have night people, but not day people, or day people, but not night people. And juggling this, and now it's back to school season, and a whole bunch of our caregivers go back to college, or go back into another setting, or change their rhythms so they're not available. So now it's a whole new surge of looking and searching and finding. And meanwhile, if you don't have night caregivers, it's mom and dad. And let me say that in these families, many times the siblings also step into caregiving roles. Sometimes willingly, because they see that that's what everybody's doing. We're caring for Levi. Even my younger son at 3 and 4 saw that everybody was punching the feeding pump buttons, right? To start and stop, because it was like continuous feed, except for the PT few hours. And even as a little kid, this bright orange box, he's like, I want to touch that. And we were like, buddy, it's the food. No, really. So only when grandma was the caregiver could he turn the on button and the off button. But even as a little kid, he was like, this is what people are doing, right? And in homes, when he was little, it was like, usually you say, don't touch the stove, right? Don't touch something hot or sharp. It was, no, no, no tubes. Don't touch the tubes, right? And in this uncertainty, there's constant chaos over and over again and exhaustion. Do you remember at the pandemic, did any of you have the experience where you would go to work and you would do the work and it was intense and full and robust? And then you'd come home and there's a whole other chapter of work to do. And you were wondering, like, are we ever going to sleep? Are we ever really going to get a break from this? Imagine if 5 more years in, that's still your rhythm. A little window into the exhaustion. Dakota's family describes that it's like floating in an ocean by yourself. Her mother describes this as the ocean is vast and huge. And even on a day when the ocean appears to be quiet, there is a lot going on under the surface. There is a lot of movement. There is a lot of activity under the surface. And some days a big storm would come up from behind you and you wouldn't see it coming. And other days it was like waking up into the storm and all the variables of it. Do you hear the aloneness? Dakota has a strong family, a lot of support around her, and still there is aloneness. And in this, Mom also describes witnessing and caring for Dakota's experience inside the sustained uncertainty. She talks about how Dakota and how she navigates her own uncertainty, even as a young child, becomes an inspiration to Mom. I can keep doing this. I can see how my child keeps going. I can keep going. Tana's family, both Mom and Dad, describe it as riding a roller coaster all day long with no brakes. Initially sounds kind of fun, right? Until you realize the no brakes part. Up and down and all around. And they would describe how sometimes Dad was over here in this part of the roller coaster doing the loop-de-loops, and Mom's over here in the deep spiral, and Tana's going up the slow hill. And there's different tempos and parts of the roller coaster that they are in simultaneously. Tana's mom, in particular, reflectively after Tana's death, and mind you, this is a 21-year roller coaster. After her death, she talks about how when Tana would go into the hospital, because remember, these families are running a care center inside their home on some level. Tana, like Levi, it was an ICU. So when you're running an ICU and you're going to another ICU, there are some important reasons why you're shifting your care center, right? And so part of what would happen, she says, is things would get beyond the capacity or the equipment. Sometimes it's that she needed a medication that couldn't be delivered in home in a certain way. It's an IV medication. You can't get it that way at home. So you have to go in, or you have to have access to certain scans and equipment or levels of expertise through you as providers. And so you go into the hospital setting, and she said Tana would be on her physical roller coaster. I would be on an emotional roller coaster. Death comes up from behind me hovering, saying, is this the hospital stay where Tana dies? And Mom readily admits that how she coped with that for her was to get angry. How she coped with that when a detail of care was missed or questioned was to get and become the bear. Because what was at stake every moment of every day, wherever Tana was, at home or at hospital, death and life were at stake. Sometimes what you're interfacing with as clinicians is the lived experience of sustained uncertainty. Sometimes the emotional state, and maybe it's like Tana's mom, that it's big or ferocious or loud or demanding or controlling. Or maybe it's quiet and heavy. I want to say that dads are also living in sustained uncertainty. You may not hear from dads as much. You may not hear from the kids as much, the siblings. Maybe you're not hearing from the patients because their modes of communication are different than the way you and I are communicating today. It's still there. Caden's mom, after we had a long discussion of sustained uncertainty about Caden and caring for him, she had an overnight with him that was a mom overnight. And Caden has these episodes of pain that are not easily cared for. A medication doesn't just fix it or make it go away. It's something that they just have to do their best and care for him. And it tends to come at night when life is quiet. It disrupts his sleep. He is uncomfortable. He is in pain. She gives him all the care and resources, including medications and different ways of supporting him. And still, he's suffering. And she is awake, caring for him. And after one of those nights, she reached back out to me by email and then through dialogue and said, you know, I often think about sustained uncertainty. I was talking about it in relation to caring for Caden. But this morning, as I wake up and I don't have care coming in, I don't have a caregiver coming in, it's me from overnight into the whole day. And in fact, my late afternoon, early evening person has just texted to say they can't come. So now it's still me. And I'm not quite sure if I can get someone in before tomorrow, which includes the next overnight. I'm now thinking about sustained uncertainty in relation to me as mom and how this is a burden that weighs extremely heavy on my soul. I wonder, she says, when will it break for me? When will I crumble? What happens when the day comes when I can't physically care for him? What happens if I'm the one in the car crash? What happens if he outlives me? Because Caden is off of his initial estimation many times over of prognosis of how long he will live. He's way outside those maps. And so she's thinking both about him dying and him outliving her. And she's the main one holding the entire mind map of sustained uncertainty for him. It is shared with dad. It is shared with siblings and other caregivers. But as you probably know in working with families, there tends to be a primary person. So this is also a burden deep on her in relation to her sustained uncertainty. Because on a practical level, she can't get out and do her basic well person checks. She can't necessarily schedule an appointment for herself and know that she's going to get to the chiropractor, to the provider, to whatever clinician it is that she knows she has a need for. Because what happens? Caden's care needs to come first. So even when she schedules it, it doesn't mean she's actually going to be able to make that appointment. A question for you. What do these families' experiences illuminate for you about sustained uncertainty? Take a moment and write some notes. This is a question I invite you to return to before you go to bed tonight. Reflect back on these families, or perhaps one of these families brings to mind a family that you have or are caring for. Be curious. In the aloneness, you are with the families. In the aloneness of what's happening today and who's coming for me, that who can be you. Sustained uncertainty can't be fixed. It can't be erased. There is no vaccine of an exit. But what can be is you being present, you being curious, you being with the child, the parents, the caregivers, the siblings, and the family. I invite you, as you go from this session today, to think about what tools are you already using in your care. A question is a tool. One of the examples is the Pediatric Serious Illness Conversation Guide. If you don't know about it, please find out about it. You can easily Google it. It's a beautiful guide for clinicians about guiding serious illness conversations. And in that, one of the questions is, what is your biggest fears and worries about the future with your child's health? This question can be drawn down into what do you feel most uncertain about instead of fears or worries. That's an example. I'm going to give you some quick examples about a current tool that can be adjusted to be curious and then be present with families. Maybe you look at this more specifically. What feels most uncertain to you while you're here at the hospital? Most uncertain to you about caring for your child as you return home? And that could be from a clinic or a hospital context. What feels most uncertain to you about your experience as a parent? I invite you to consider what is it that you're already engaging as a tool or a resource. And that may be, as you hear them talk about their uncertainty, they may be using metaphors. It may show up as worry and concern. That this is a reminder that you can slow down and use an accordion breath for yourself to be present with them, even for just a moment. Even for just a moment, to undo some of the aloneness that is pervasive. There's a QR code for your survey questions. We're right at time. So I invite you to reach out with questions. We're going to stay in the room if you are able to. I know many of you have to swoosh off to the next chapter of your day. Thank you for being here. Thank you for entering into this space of sustained uncertainty. As you depart, I invite you to take a moment of transition, connect back to your anchor or your buoy breath, and to remind yourself that as you go from this room to the next, you can care for yourself and care for families. To be present with yourself helps you be more present with families in their sustained uncertainty. Thank you.